Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. We are in Nazareth in Galilee, and today we are going to visit together the Basilica of the Annunciation, Joseph's Carpentry. But did you know that these places, which are some of the most important biblical sites in Israel, are taken care of by Brazilians? Yes, there are also Brazilian communities here in Nazareth. So, let's meet them and let's get to know these very important places. So, if you are ready, let's get started. The city of Nazareth has 4,200 years of history. Today, it is the largest city in all of Galilee with 80,000 inhabitants. In Hebrew, the name of the city is Nazareth, which comes from the word netzer, meaning sprout or shoot. And this is precisely the same word used in the verse of Isaiah 11:1. For a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse, from his roots a branch will bear fruit. Yafomi Sontraisis. Jesus will be called in the New Testament 17 times as Jesus of Nazareth, since in this city he will live most of his life, from the return from Egypt until he moves to Capernaum. We are now at the Church of the Annunciation, and who is here with us? Today is a Brazilian from Rio Grande do Sul, like me too, the
Letícia, verdade.
What are you doing so far from home?
We're missing a mate here, right, for us to chat. I am Brazilian, I am Letícia, I am married, I am a missionary of the Canção Nova community, which is based in Brazil, in Cachoeira Paulista, São Paulo. And we are a small group of Brazilians here. We have a community here in Nazareth, but also in Jerusalem. And we are missionaries, and we are in partnership with the Franciscans, who are also the ones who guard the holy places and who guard the Basilica here of the Annunciation. We specifically work with Canção Nova, with the broadcasts from the Basilica on YouTube, Facebook, and also on the Christian Media Center website. It's Canção Nova that's behind the cameras in the backstage.
So the ones here behind the scenes are Brazilians?
Yes, all Brazilians.
And there are more Brazilians
still here. The Shalom community, which is also a Brazilian community, and they work with liturgical animation here. So they work with music, they work with welcoming pilgrims, they work with the care inside the Basilica with reception.
And besides the communities of Canção Nova and Shalom, which are Brazilian, the guardian, the custodian of the church is also Brazilian, and his name is Brother Bruno. Let's go together to visit the Basilica of the Annunciation. Let's go! Inside the church, in a little while, we will see the remains of Mary's house and the place of the Annunciation by the angel Gabriel. But I want to tell you about the church itself first. One of the first churches in the Holy Land was built here during the Byzantine era. But this church will be destroyed and rebuilt during the Crusader period. And the church will be destroyed and rebuilt over and over again. And this church that we are walking in, it is a modern church built in 1969 on the remains of older churches, which we will also see in a little while. Going down the stairs, we return to the lowest level, which is the time of Jesus, and we start to see the remains of a house. This is the childhood home of Mary, and where the Annunciation by the angel Gabriel will also take place, as written in Luke chapter 1, verses 26 to 38. The house itself, it is very typical for the time. It is a simple house, remembering that Nazareth then is a very, very small village. It is estimated that a few hundred people lived here. The nearest big city was the city of Cana of Galilee, and they took advantage of what nature already gave them. Here there are many natural caves, and therefore inside these caves they built their houses. But this house is not complete. Why? because in the Middle Ages, crusaders took and carried stones and parts of this house to Europe, where they are to this day. Looking at the back of the house, we can see some stairs that go up to the upper floor. This floor is not open to the public, but today the church staff allowed us to go there to film as well. So stay tuned, because we are going to explore the continuation of the house in a little while. Among the archaeological remains, we are seeing here a mosaic floor from the beginning of the 12th century, which is part of the Crusader church that was here. The modern church has 2 floors, and from up here we can have a very different view of Mary's house. And we can also look up and see this kind of dome, this peak, which is so striking in the architecture of this church. We are arriving at the archaeological area, which is this zone that is not normally open to the public. And we are going to see the rest of Mary's house. We saw the stairs inside the church, and going up them, we arrive at this area here. This cave is a continuation of Mary's house. This part here, the upper floor, is believed to be the kitchen. So the cooler, more pleasant place is where they lived on the lower floor, and here the upper floor, this part of the cave, it could also be for cooking. We can see that the house continued, so here this part of the house collapsed, but you can still clearly see the remains of this house carved into the rock. But they lived in Nazareth, which, despite being a small town, is a town. This means they have neighbors. There are other people who lived here. So now let's go up to the village and see Mary's neighbors. Let's go. Walking through the remains of the town of Nazareth from Jesus' time, we see how the town was really small. As we mentioned, a few hundred inhabitants. In fact, the town is not mentioned by name even once in the Old Testament. And it was not a well-known and famous city. And this reminds us of the passage from John 1:46. Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And said to him, "Philip, come and see." And that's what we're doing today. We are walking and seeing what the city of Nazareth was like in Jesus' time and the biblical story that takes place here. We are inside one of the houses of one of Mary's neighbors, and we can see the stone construction. This stone, which is very common here in Galilee, is limestone, and it is very good for construction. So, we are now leaving the houses that are Mary's neighbors, the other houses here in Nazareth. And what we are seeing is about 2,000 years old. Here, after this period, churches were built. The first church that was built here is from the Byzantine period. This Byzantine church will of course be destroyed and rebuilt several times, but here we can see part of the mosaic from the first church here of the Annunciation. Shall we now visit another super important biblical place here in Nazareth? And here in front of us we see Joseph represented. Why? Because he also receives an annunciation as written in Matthew chapter 1, starting from verse 20. But while he thought on these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. This bright building here in front of us, it is known as Joseph's Carpentry, because according to local tradition, this was his carpentry. And also according to part of the local traditions, here was not only the carpentry, but also the house where Joseph, Mary, and Jesus lived. A special thank you to Tassio, who is also Brazilian and is here helping us today. Welcome. The church that we are entering is also a modern church. It was built in 1914, which means it's a little over 100 years old. But it's built on top of older churches. A Crusader church and also a Byzantine church were found here in archaeological excavations. To see these archaeological remains, we're going to go down to the lower floor to the crypt of the church. This is something that works for practically all historical places, that the oldest things always stay further down, since with the centuries that have passed, in this case 2,000 years, the street level and the city level keep rising, rising and rising. The white stones at the bottom are original from the times of Jesus, and here on the side we can see a different construction. It is from the Byzantine period and it is part of this church. These steps that go down, they were used as a space for baptisms. According to local tradition, Jesus grew up in this house where Joseph and Mary also lived and where his carpentry was located. But now look at the historical phases of this place. Right on top we can see the modern church that we saw. Here is where we are now, which has some remains from the times of Jesus and also from the Byzantine times, for example, the baptism site. But we will look below. There is a cave, as we saw the other houses of Nazareth also had looking down. We can see steps that go down in total. There are 9 steps and they reach the lower floor, the cave, the lowest part of the house, / Joseph's carpentry. It is 4.5 meters wide, 10 meters long, and 2 meters high. But as you can see, there is a door and it is closed. Since 2,000 years have passed, the floor and structure are not safe to walk on, and that's why we can't go in. But there are several points here in the church where we will see grates and look down and we can see parts of the house. I hope you enjoyed today's video here in Nazareth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos in Galilee and in Israel.
And we'll see each other in the next one.